Hi everybody and welcome to the Language Reading Improvement Program Fortnightly video training. These sessions are designed to refresh and assist you in effectively using the LRIP resources in your day-to-day teaching. You will be expected to complete a brief pre-test to measure your understanding of the content for this 2-week cycle. You will also complete a post-test at the end of this training session. Remember, this is the first in a series of sessions that will be shared regularly, so stay tuned for more. Let's continue working together to improve learner performance in our classrooms. Before we continue with the rest of the training, you will now be given sufficient time to complete the pre-test. Good luck, everybody. In this training video, I will unpack Grade 4, Term 3, Week 7 and 8's content, the theme of which is poetry. Before I go into the expectations of Week 7 and 8, let's do a quick recap of what you covered in Weeks 3, 4, 5 and 6. Your learners were busy with the creative writing project. They have now completed the research aspect of the creative writing project and they have presented the information in the form of either a diagram, a Venn diagram or a poster. Thereafter, you have done stage 2 of the project in which the learners have completed the writing part of it. Here your learners showcased both their literature skills as well as their writing skills. Now the third part of the creative writing project is the oral presentation. Now your learners are preparing for this, but it doesn't mean that they have to complete it in term 3. You are welcome to complete it in term 4 as the marks for the oral presentation will only be recorded in term 4. Let's take a look at the expectations for week 7 and 8. For the listening and speaking skill, the learners are expected to complete a listening comprehension activity and also perform a stanza or an entire poem. For the reading and viewing component, the learners will read and view a poem and answer a reading comprehension. For the writing aspect, the learners are expected to write sentences that rhyme. And for the language, structures and conventions component, the learners will cover conjunctions, statements, simple sentences. And since we are doing poetry, the learners will also do the following figures of speech: personification, alliteration, similes, metaphors, rhythm and rhyme. Included in the LRIP package are lesson plans for every 2-week cycle. You have 2 hours within the 2-week cycle to complete your listening and speaking activities. As mentioned earlier, for the listening component, learners must listen to a poem being read to them while they take down notes. You are expected to read the poem of your choice to them a few times so that they may make sufficient notes. Then they will be expected to answer questions based on the poem that was read to them and use the notes to assist them. You will then mark the answers and do the necessary corrective work. Now don't forget to also do the speaking component of the skill, in which you ask learners to express their feelings that were stimulated by the poem or to perform a poem or even selected stanzas of the poem. We now move on to the reading and viewing skill, in which you have 5 hours to complete these activities in a 2-week cycle. When it comes to reading and viewing, please ensure that you do the following activities. You do a pre-reading activity in which you ask learners to predict from the title or from the pictures. You ask them to look for contextual clues. You ask them to look for rhythm. You ask them to identify the rhythm, the rhyme, to break up words into syllables. You must also ensure that you have evidence of the pre-reading activity in the learners' books. During shared reading, use as many of the reading methodologies that are mentioned here to bring about understanding of the poem. Learners will be expected to answer questions based on the poem. There are poems and questions included in this package, as well as informal poetry assessments. Also, don't forget to do reading for enjoyment and reading for practice. There should be evidence of every reading activity that you cover for the reading and viewing skill. In every 2-week cycle, we are expected to spend 2 hours on the writing and presenting skill. Expectations of the skill are that the learners must write pairs of sentences that end in words that rhyme. Now, when we ask learners to write, we have to teach and guide the writing process. We have to do an example in which we model the writing processes. Thereafter, we may instruct the learners to follow the writing processes in creating their own 2-line poetry. An hour is allocated to teach the language structures and conventions component. However, we teach these concepts in context and we incorporate it into the other skills. You will be guided by the lesson plan as to which concept to include in the listening and speaking, reading and viewing, and writing and presenting skill. There are other resources and reading improvement strategies included in this package, and these include ideas on how to have a print-rich classroom, how to have a word wall for your 2-week cycle, video resources to help with explanations, DBE workbook page references, exemplar informal poetry assessments, and PowerPoint presentations explaining the figures of speech for poetry. We encourage you to implement these strategies to bring about an improvement in our learners' ability to read with meaning and to read with understanding. The more exposure we give them to vocabulary, the better they will learn, remember, and understand the words of this language. I trust that you now have a better understanding of how to cover the content for weeks 7 and 8. I wish you all the best. Don't forget to complete the post test. Goodbye, everybody.